thanks for having me. Where did it start for me in tennis? Well, it was probably when I was a kid. I was maybe 7, 8. My brother used to play, not at a high level. It was just at the local club. This was in Johannesburg, South Africa, where I grew up. And just like anybody else, you follow your older sibling or your brother or your sister, and you start taking it up as well. And we came from a family of 4 boys, so we didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't have opportunities to belong to a tennis club or get coaching. So I would go up there, I'd hit against the wall. I mean, I was maybe, like I said, 7, 8, 9 years old. I'd find tennis balls in the field nearby that people had maybe hit over, or so I'd just be like a scavenger in a way. I'd just go pick up tennis balls, old ones. I mean, even your dog wouldn't want this tennis ball. Borrowed rackets. Like I said, we didn't have a lot of money to go into like sports equipment and stuff like that. I fell in love with the game. I would, like I said, hit against the wall for hours. I would go before school. I would crawl under the fence of the tennis court so I could get in, because obviously they were locked. And if I saw like somebody from the club coming, I'd have to like quickly get out of there. So those are my first memories of tennis. Because we couldn't afford coaching, I would actually watch, and this is something I still think about myself, of like, where did you get that from, Allistair? So maybe I was 10 or 11, and I would watch coaching sessions. I would watch coaches work with other players, and I would like steal. I would sit there and I'd listen, and okay, he's showing to like scratch your back with the serve, all these basic things. I still remember that, and the C shape and all that. And I would go and practice that myself. And, I was 10, I was 11. So I was already, I suppose, planting the seed for my future of coaching and learning and listening at that age, but I didn't realize that. So I taught myself to play tennis. I got to a very decent level. I was 11 in the country at 14. But when you get to that, and we had some good players, there are guys that went on to play ATP and guys that, went to top 100 and so on, that were in my age group. So South Africa had a really good, had some good players back in the day.
What were their names? Can you tell me their names?
Oh, Robbie Koenig, Neville Godwin, Wayne Ferreira was just before us. There was a whole lot of good doubles players. Chris Haggard. There was a lot of South Africans that were, on the tour, that were between, say, ranked between 50 and 250. There was quite a big group of them. I never reached that level. I mean, I stopped tennis at about 14 because we just couldn't afford it anymore. It got too frustrating that we couldn't afford to go to tournaments. There was no support.
I can imagine. That's hard.
Yeah. So I knew from a young age, Laura, I wanted to be a champion in some sport. Obviously, at the beginning, I wanted it to be tennis, but it wasn't meant to be. I still loved the sport, though. And I took up running because you don't need much money for running. And I got, And I think just the work ethic that I had, I trained, and I became the South African under-16 5-kilometer champion. And then went on to compete in duathlon, which is running and biking, 5 world championships. Wow. That was my sporting career. I think just the seed was planted in me from a young age of wanting to be great at something, wanted to be a champion at something. So it didn't work out for tennis, but it worked out in another sport.
Running, let me tell you, being a tennis player, running long distance, it's not my favorite. It's never been my favorite. No, not at all. You're talking about it pretty much now, but did you always know you were going to direct this idea of you wanting to be a champion into what you do now, which is obviously you're coaching coaches, you're coaching teams, you're leading in team culture and motivation, but did you know, or this just kind of started happening?
Of course, what do you know at 11, 12, you have a vision, and it's something I write about in a lot of my books, is that it's important to have a vision. And, a vision is like a dream. From a young age, I wanted to be a champion. I'd draw pictures of myself standing on a podium, or I'd cut out pictures and put my head on top of Rocky Balboa, for example. I mean, I still have these things that my father kept for me,
So you were a really good visualization, I guess. That's you did well with that, and not many people talk about that, and I believe it's so huge for sport.
Yeah, that's where I believe it starts. You look at Novak. When Novak, there's some footage of him when he was on TV as a kid, and he's talking about being a champion, and
I've seen it.
he's like maybe 8 or 9 years old, and then Michael Phelps as well. I spoke to Michael's coach a while back, and he said, Michael would also, when Michael was 8, 9, would dream of being a champion and so on. So I really believe it all starts there as a kid. You create this vision for yourself.
Yeah, I actually spoke to, and I'm good friends with Jean-Julien Roger. I don't know, I'm sure you know his name. Good doubles player, great guy. And I spoke to him and his doubles partner Horia Tecau from Romania, and I mean, they both say, listen, I didn't know anything when I was 10, 11. What do you know then? But all I knew is that I wanted that lifestyle. I wanted to be that person being driven. They were driven by money then, by cars, and just by the idea of doing that. But I guess that's some sort of visualizing what you want to do later on. And what we're most interested, me and just the idea that I had, is just connecting all these successful people from every different discipline and saying, listen, they're all the same. They all have these characteristics that in some sort of way, it shows that this is why they get to where they are. And, somebody like you, that not only you did it for yourself, but you've seen it happen over and over again in other people. It's so exciting for me to talk to you. So I have a question here that it says, like, did you know you were going to be as good as you are at what you do? When did you recognize different things that you say, you know what, I think I'm really good at this?
I've never thought about that, to be honest. I mean, I always say, like, people use this term, he or she is an expert in something. I never believe that we're an expert in anything. When you're always learning and you're always growing, you're always evolving, you're never an expert in anything, because an expert is a word where it's like the person knows it all, for example. But no, for me, I don't actually think about it, Laura. I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. And when you love what you do, you work harder at it, and it doesn't feel like work.
Growing up, did you see that you were a little bit different than the kids around you?
Yeah, I did, because I was so driven, like I said, to be a champion. So even at the young age of 10, 11, I would do newspaper rounds and to make some money, obviously. And I would, instead of cycling them, I would run them. And sometimes there were 8 kilometers, 10 kilometers. I would run the newspaper rounds to get fitter for my game. And I was on a call this morning to the Liverpool ladies soccer team back in England. And one of the questions from one of the players was very similar to what you asked there. What's like one of the commonalities you see in people that are very, very good at what they do? And, I'm going back to your previous question here, was they just love what they do. It's just like they just, even if they were getting paid for it or they weren't getting paid for it, they would still do it. Mm-hmm. And it's the same for me, is if I won 20 million in the lottery tomorrow, that would be nice. However, I'd still do what I do. Honestly, I'd still do what I do. I wouldn't go, oh, I want to start something else. Well, I have that type of mindset. If I wanted to start something else, I would have started something else. I would have made the steps to own a restaurant or to go whatever it may do, whatever. But I love what I do. Regardless if I made all the money in the world tomorrow, I'd still want to do this, So, I'm very, very lucky. Very lucky.
You're lucky because, you found what you like, but I think you worked at finding what you like. So you're lucky because not many people do get there. And I think in terms of your success, I think that's what maybe lucky is, just getting the gratitude from people and the attention. But I think just having the passion and working at it, I think you found it. So
I see luck as those who make more opportunities are luckier. That's really what it
Mhm.
comes down to. My dad always used to say, you're not going to win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket, and it's a metaphor, as in,
Yeah.
you're not going to get anything if you don't, take the necessary steps. And, like we just said there, the luckiest people simply just make more opportunities.
Yeah. And from the most successful kids that you've worked with, can you name just really, you've probably done this before, but name a few characteristics that you say, this is, when I see this athlete, I know that they're good.
Well, number one, it's their choice. They love what they do. They're not being pushed by a parent to do it. So they're actually pushing the parents. They're nagging the parents to stay at practice or to go back. Or, a little side story. I used to work with a girl who was number 2 in the world in squash. And I asked her similar questions. And I said to her, as a kid, what were you like? She said, I was that kid that would be sitting, at the courts all day or all weekend while my parents would play. And the minute somebody would go off the court at, say, on the hour, I would be that kid that would be quickly running on the court to hit balls until the next people came onto the court. You know what I mean? Like those are little characteristics where they're just, they're opportunists in a way. You know what I mean? Where like me,
They want it bad.
Yeah. So that's definitely one of the characteristics. If they have the work ethic, if they have the self-drive, the hunger themselves, and it's not coming from anywhere else, then definitely those are characteristics of kids, of kids
Yeah.
to be successful. Then I always believe there'll be one driving parent, usually in a kid that's going to be successful. Usually it's the father who's driving it a lot more with wanting their kid to be a good athlete or whatever, and it's the mom has to facilitate it and all that. But what other characteristics? One or two I could give you would be, let's see, that they're very coachable is a big word, that they're able to listen, they're able to absorb. That's a big one. Kids that tend to think they know it all, or and you've probably come across some of these kids at a later stage in college and that they think they're coachable, but they're not. You know what I mean?
That was one of the main things that being in college, we looked for freshmen to be coachable, because their idea of being coachable was completely different than my idea of you being coachable. Yeah.
If I can ask you there, you obviously were a college coach. In recruiting, how were you able to pick up if somebody was coachable or not before you recruited them? Besides maybe asking other coaches, what characteristics did you look for?
So what I tried to do, obviously, was talk to coaches, talk to the coaches that they've played with, talk to their parents. I used to recruit their parents way more than I recruited the kid. I would watch their way of communicating, a parent and the kid, the way their respect towards their parents, at least to the things that the parent was saying to them. I would just kind of look at the dynamic of where that standard was, how they had, when we go into meetings, just the way that they would pass by information in between them as well. It would be, I would say, I looked at the dynamic with the parents, because I kind of define that as, if they are that way with their parents, why would they be different with me? And exactly. So I think, and I would put them also in their spot. I would ask them different ways, but I would ask them, how coachable are you when this happens in a match? What do you usually tend to think, feel? If I told you that you were not good enough at this time, at this point in time, how would you feel? So I would just kind of see what they would answer, but it's definitely not an easy thing. And watch them in tournaments, obviously it's huge, and watch the dynamic between the kid and the coach. But, and then maturity comes along and you have to see where their answers are. And so, but recruiting is definitely I would say one of the hardest things from college coaching, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's hard, and it defines your success in many ways. So
big time.
Yeah, you've worked with plenty of college coaches.
In different sports as well. And, you know, these are the discussions that we have a lot of the time is characteristics and you know, things to look for. And that's why I'm always interested when I get the opportunity to speak to someone like yourself or a college coach of to hear what, you know, how you go about it and what you look for and so on. And I know you're interviewing me here, but I'm taking full advantage of having you here as well. So if you could say what like a red flag was for you, like one, I know there's several, but what was like a red flag for you?
So body language is a big one. If, you know, I would go watch him in the tournaments and I didn't like the way this player was carrying herself, because I coach women, I was rapidly turned off. That would tell me a lot of what she was thinking, how she would kind of react to even situations, and how maybe embarrassed she was at her game or whatnot. And so that would tell me confidence as well. So I would look at body language. If the body language was wrong, I didn't like it. And essentially their way of communicating, their social skills, told me a lot about who they were at that time. And then I would just kind of gauge so if I was recruiting a junior or a senior, then I would know, right, that she still has 2 more years. She's going to get there. She still has, you know, she has 1 more year. So I would say, body language and their social ability, how to be with humans. Yeah.
Right.
It has nothing to do with tennis, but I mean, it has a lot to do with it. So, and I'm sure you understand that. Yeah.
I always say that, you know, your skills are the entry ticket and your attitude determines how far you go, you know, because obviously,
I mean, in college, you know, those years, again, like how much better can you get in terms of how much faster can you hit the ball? Okay, well, if we put your leg here and maybe you can put a little bit more weight here and transfer it there, sure, you can maybe hit this much faster, but is that really going to make a difference at 5-all, 40-all, where you have to hit, you know, you have to make the right choice at the right time? How do you do that? With your power or with your mind, right? So I was looking for somebody that was willing to go there and willing to truly go through the process of growing emotionally. And that's a big part of my coaching. It was making you better at life, and then we can see how that life, you know, transpires and transfers into the court. And that's really, so that's why I'm so interested in talking to somebody like you, because it kind of validates everything that I always felt, and in the coaching, right, philosophies that I align myself with. So in tennis, when you work with tennis players, I'm interested in knowing if you can tell why. So why do you think tennis gives, or it's different than other sports mentally?
It's a good question, because it's a sport where I have this theory, which is called the 10-20-70 theory. So 10-20 theory. So I always ask tennis players a question. So I'll say to them, how many matches did you play last year, give or take? And they might say 100. Okay, 100 matches, which is a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just putting a simple number out there.
Yeah.
Guys, so I'll ask them, for example, out of those 100 matches last year, how many did you play so bad? Maybe 20 or whatever. They'll just say, you know, where it wasn't that good. So I said, okay, good. So 70% of the time you're playing your average. You're playing how you usually play. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you'll play really, really bad, which is maybe 20% of the time. And sometimes you'll play unbelievable, which is less than 10% of the time. So here's where I'm getting to here, is that you have to be able to accept your 70% when you go onto the court. Now, why players can't get over themselves or they get upset on the court is because they're always comparing themselves to the 10%, the time that they played unbelievably. Why am I not playing like this all the time? And that's where they can't get past a good mindset on the court, is because they can't get past not playing their best every time. They don't understand that you're not going to play your best every time you go on the court. Like,
and that's a good way to also explain, because I've talked to some players and I remember, you know, saying, why would you get mad at just missing balls? Like, why is that even a big deal, right? Like, why aren't you understanding that this is a game of errors? It's a game of getting better at your 70%. So like that 70% that you're talking about, let's just make it better. Like for that 70% to just look better in terms of how you play, right? So what I would tell my players was, if, you know, I would put an example, like if, let's say your level is 500 in the world right now, let's just make a standard and say you're playing like a player that's 500 or 400 in the world. That's your 70%. That's your average. That's where you are at usually. So can we make that 70% like you play like somebody that's 300 now, 350, 200, right? So like, but still, that's not, I don't want that to be your best. I want that to be your average, right? So like, it's exactly what you're saying. So it's like, let's make our bad days not so bad. Like, let's just make them look not so horrible, and let's just kind of stay, right? Is that kind of 100%. Where you're at? Yeah.
100%. You get it as well. It's you know, how good are you on your days where you're playing your game, your average game? You know, can you accept it? How, you know, you're absolutely right there. How good can you get there? Because you're not going to be playing the way you want every time you step onto the court. And can you accept that? So getting back to your question, that's the difference I see in the best players, is that they're able to deal with, like you said, their worser days, so to say.
Yeah. And one thing, and tell me if you think this is something that you think too, from the best players that I had, I realized that they're very okay with being analytical. They're okay with the stats. They're okay with seeing, okay, where am I missing? Where am I doing well? Where are these people beating me at? Like, I remember asking my coach, I said, when I realized that I could ask this question, I said, I'm doing well. I can be really good. And I said, listen, if you were coaching against me, what would you do against me? I need to know. I need to know how would you play me? And the moment that I was okay with my coach telling me that, for some reason, I just kept going at it and up and up and up, because I would see my opponents a little bit different, right? It would be just kind of like, it was like a battle, like a war. And I enjoyed that war. I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I was okay with the nerves about it. And, you know, I'm going on a tangent here, and this is a fun conversation, but I think also enjoying the nerves and knowing that they're completely part of the game, and kind of like embracing that, you know, that's something I did see in the champions that I was around. If you could put them together for a rising junior and their parents, 3 things that could be important for them to mentally work at, mentally, for the sport, what do you think they would be?
Definitely behaviors. Behaviors are, you know, behaviors become your results. So I would definitely say from a young age, it's what the kids are being rewarded on. Are they being rewarded on winning and losing? Or should I say being rewarded on winning? Or are they being rewarded, or are they being rewarded on the behaviors that facilitate winning? You know, work ethic, attitude, energy, like you just mentioned there, body language, for example. So the scorecard for me is different with working with young players, or, you know, is let me see those things, your behaviors, because your behaviors become your results eventually.
Yeah.
So that would definitely be one area. Second one would be in the development of them, definitely that they have a good range of skills, athletic skills. I always said I don't believe a kid under the age of 12 needs to go to a tennis fitness trainer. I think they should still be at 12, 13, still doing a variety of stuff for their fitness, playing soccer, whatever it may be. I'm not a big fan of, I'm just saying, 10-year-olds going to tennis fitness sessions 3-4 times a week specifically. We always have to remember that when kids start playing the game, they didn't sign up for fitness. They didn't sign up to go run hills. They started to play tennis because they love the game. And then all of a sudden they get a little better and we start pushing all this other stuff on them that they have to go to fitness. And again, the words we use as well with them, that they have to go to here and they have to go to there. So that would be the second thing, is that they get a host of athletic skills. We see, you were talking about Grigor and you're talking about Roger and so on. They're good athletes. They can play soccer. They can play basketball. They're at a very good level at other things they do.
Sorry to stop you there. I know we're going on the third one, but on that note, I mean, we used to be, so Andy Murray is a close friend, and he, if you see this guy play soccer, I couldn't believe it. I thought to myself, and I mean, in Nadal, I mean, he obviously was more of a, at the beginning soccer player, but I could not believe, and with women, I think this is very big. I think for men, it's a little bit more natural, the athletic skills, but you find one girl here and there that is very, very athletic. But I think for women, for girls growing up, I think it's a big thing that you're saying. I think they need to develop way more their athletic skills and their agility. Just the way, I mean, my career was completely around the way I moved. I mean, if I didn't move well, I don't think I would have been as good as I was. I was blessed with that ability, for sure. There, I was lucky. I was lucky there.
Yeah, I mean, talking about women players, I mean, one of the best athletes I ever worked with was Svetlana Kuznetsova. And, I was with Svetlana back in, yeah. I mean, for me, she was the best mover on clay. Her ability to slide on both legs, and she could slide. A lot of tennis players, especially female, can only slide on their dominant leg. So she could slide very, very well, open with left leg and right leg. Balance was fantastic. She could do the splits. But getting back to the athletic skills, I don't know if you ever saw her with a soccer ball or whatever. I mean, she
was amazing,
unbelievable. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I know. Yeah. I think her dad was a cyclist. He was also a very big athlete. So I think that's also a thing that I've spoken about this quite a lot. It's also lucky that a kid kind of falls into a family that the parents get it. So that's kind of my push here. I just to balance that out a little bit more for families that maybe don't have the education behind athletics.
Absolutely. And I was having this conversation, I think yesterday or the day before, with a call as well with Scottish. There was a few federations from Scotland that were on there, like archery and fencing and so on and so forth. And I think one of the biggest failures or areas where coaches fall short is not educating parents enough and not communicating well enough with parents. And that's why we have crazy parents, or parents that feel aggrieved because they're not being communicated enough by the coaches of what's going on and why we're doing this and why I'm changing that, for example. So, the better programs I've seen running and the better coaches that have healthy programs usually all have healthy relationships with the parents. Mm-hmm. Healthy academies, they usually have really good relationships with the parents. There's good communication. The parents are kept in the loop with what's going on and so on and so forth. So, it would definitely be the communication. And that is a coach's job, is to communicate with the parents. Getting back to number 3 of the 3 questions you asked about what I'm pretty good, without bragging, I'm pretty good at remembering things from like previous, but definitely the right environment is very important to put your kid into if they love the sport and so on and so forth. So, why I got back to this is that you mentioned you were at in Barcelona at Sanchez Casal, and that was a melting pot of Andy, your brother was there, Svetlana was there. I mean, interesting phase in development of the players that were around you that obviously went on to become number one in the world, Andy, and then obviously Svetlana and so on. You were able to see the transformation. I mean, one of the key things I saw there as well, which I wrote about in Champion Minded, is and they were really good at this. Remember Angel, the coach that wore the big hat always, little
Angel, of course. Yeah.
I remember sitting in the cafeteria the one time looking out the window, and Svetlana said to me, she pointed at him and she said, "There's one of the reasons why I got to where I am today, is because
they were like this. They were, I remember, yeah."
Well, she was basically talking about, obviously a good relationship, but talking about just the same drills over and over and over again. And that is what the champions can handle better than other people, is the monotony and the boredom of doing something over and over and over again and understanding it. Kevin Anderson as well, and I respectfully say this, he's one of the least talented players I've ever worked with. And
he's spoken about that himself.
Yeah. And, I wrote about it in the book as well and asked for his permission. And, I see it as, I have so much respect because he has to work 5 times harder. I mean this, than the next guy. I mean, when we'd work with Kevin, you'd maybe do 50 serves with somebody. He would do 150 because it took him that long to get it. If you know what I mean, you had to do things 3 times more with him. And I had a lot of respect for that.
Yeah. And, and my next question to you will be about coaches, now that we're getting into coaches. But for me, the question to you is, what characteristics do you see in a great coach?
They have good empathy. They're able to understand the player very well in the situation. They're able to, like I say, feel the moment better. They're able to see what type of person they get each day when they see them. I always remember a conversation I had with a coach. I think it was Sven Grunefeld, when we worked with a player back in 2005. And I was pretty new on the scene with working with players. And he always said to me, I always know what day I'm going to get when the player comes down to breakfast. So I might have planned A, B, and C for today, but that needs to get chucked out, and we're going to have to go with E, F, and G. And that always stuck with me, is that great coaches are able to have a plan, but they're able to change it quickly. That word adapt. They're able to adapt quickly to the situation. So it would be empathy. It would be the ability to adapt. And I mean, I spent some time last year at Duke with Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski.
Wow. And how exciting.
Yeah, fantastic guy, really is. Even better in person than on TV or whatever. So I was in his office, and that's amazing as well. I mean, there's pictures of all the presidents with him and so on and so forth, because he's done so much. And I asked him, Coach, how are you still able to do this after 40 years at Duke, at one place? And I said, how do you get success like that all the time? And he said, well, the big word is adapt. I have to adapt every single season, because I may be coaching the same game, but I'm getting different players in every season. So I have to change. I have to adapt. He said,
that's a big thing in college. It's how you have to adapt to every different team every year, right? Makes sense.
Exactly. So, the big word there was adapt. And then he said this. He said, you know what? It's not just the key in sports. It's the key in life, is your ability to adapt. And we're in a situation right now, obviously, with the coronavirus and so on, is those who adapted quickly are doing okay. Those who complain and point fingers and play victims, they're the ones that are not doing okay. So number one, I'd say about a coach, and there's a lot of things, but empathy, adaptable, able to adapt. And I'd say number 3 is obviously a good understanding of the game.
Yeah,
is important.
And would you say that tennis has taught you something, specifically tennis?
I mean, it's taught me so many things. I mean, I'm so grateful for what the sport's given me, but I would say friendships, and I'm sure you agree with that as well. We've met so many people on the journey. You have a connection, you have things to talk about. Community. Yeah. So I would say it would be that one. Yeah.
Nice. And how do you envision yourself around tennis in the future? Do you have any plans coming up?
I mean, I obviously love, being around tournaments and so on. Obviously, I don't do it as much anymore, the traveling to tennis tournaments. I don't get the time. But, for example, last season, Lloyd Harris, the South African, asked me if I was free for a few weeks. So I traveled with him in the States a little bit. I was supposed to be out at Indian Wells. Obviously, that was canceled. So at the moment, nothing really in the near future. There's a lot of other things as we were just talking about, soccer and basketball and so on and so forth. But, I could be called this afternoon to go to a tournament in 3 weeks if I was available. So you just never know,
Yeah.
But college tennis, yes, that's still going. Once we get back on track, I consulted a few colleges as well. So that'll happen again.
Nice. And the role that you have in the sport and for an athlete that you may work with or a team, I know those might be different answers, but the role that you play in the big picture of the sport, like what do you think you offer to the sport? Like, who are you?
Yeah, definitely. It's about mindset and daily management are the two big words, because we're already dealing with people that are highly skilled. I mean, the best in the world, at what they do. So how much more can they get better at that skill? I mean, miniature, because as you know, everybody knows each other on the tour, the top 100. Everybody knows your strengths, your weaknesses. You can't hide that stuff anymore. So your weakness will probably always be your weakness, and your strength will always be your strength once you're established at 15, 16, 17. That's your strength, that's your weakness. And it'll probably always be like that the rest of your career. So mindset is a big one. Daily management, if I was traveling with an athlete, for example, it's facilitating their day that they are able to perform at their highest. It's, and this is some things that new coaches on the tour get wrong badly, is their planning is not, they have poor planning of the day. They're getting late transportation. They forgot to book the court, all these small little things. And, your brother, talking about Danny, he's one of the best at that as well. You can see he's very professional. He's very organized. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason. And this is what people maybe don't get, why he is a sought after coach by big players, is not because he knows everything about, the forehand and the backhand. It's these management skills and the professionalism of someone that's organized. They want a guy like that or a girl in their team like that. Those are highly sought after skills, because how much more can you tell them how to hit a forehand or a backhand or whatever? That's like, no, that's not why you're here. My role, obviously, my role with teams and so on and so forth is more towards leadership and team culture.
Yeah. What do you think about, so you're talking about daily management of an athlete during a tournament. What do you think about daily management of an athlete in general? Like during practice weeks, during their, not off days. Of course, you're not going to manage their off days, but what do you think about just yearly daily management of an athlete, and especially a college athlete?
Critical. I always say one of the key things is you have to have a game plan to your day. You have to have a schedule to your day. You have to have many goals of your day. You've got routines built in there. Those are some of the traits of the best performers in the world, successful people, is that they have a strategic plan to their day. They have things that they need to do. They're in order, for example. So it's critical, regardless if you're an athlete or not, or whatever, is that you should have a game plan to your day. That's one of the commonalities of successful people. Yeah.
And emotional management as well, for me, is huge. College kids, they don't really know how to do this yet. I think it's a concept that they don't have an idea about, and they'll find themselves with this like emotions every day. So for me, daily management of an athlete meant that. How would I see my athlete in the morning? How was she in the afternoon? How was she at night? I needed to know, or I needed to help for her to maybe wake up a different way that she would have woken up if I didn't reach out, Friday afternoon, right?
Exactly, Laura. And it gets back to that word adapt. You know, you wake up and then you see the athlete or you see your team or whatever, and you change your plan for that day, or, you have to be able to adapt. So daily management is daily management. I mean, that's also a massive part of, a college coach as well, which you were, is it's just daily management. It's daily management because you already have the skill set there, the players.
Yeah. Amazing. So let's just finish with two things that I always like to finish with, and you've given me a bunch already because you're a mental coach. But tell us two mottos that you live your life by.
Two mottos. One of them is definitely on my shirt here. Excellence is an attitude. So that's definitely something that I try and live by, is excellence and not perfection. There's a deeper meaning to this, is that I wouldn't say a perfectionist, but I believe anybody who reaches a very high level in anything is a near perfectionist or a perfectionist, because it's that mindset of, I want to get better. It's not good enough. I want to get better. And you beat yourself up. And I was getting to that stage a few years back where everything just was never good enough. You run a marathon and
that could be dangerous too.
Exactly. You run a marathon in a good time and it's not good enough. You should have gone quicker. And it's like a never ending, and it's exhausting. So I decided that I was going to aim for excellence. And what is excellence? It's the best I can do today. And I'm okay with that. I maybe had plans to have a bike ride today and let's just say I didn't get it done. I would beat myself up about that. But it's like, okay, fine. Tomorrow's another day. Doesn't mean you're lazy. Just tomorrow's another day. It's okay. So that would be one of the mottos. What would the other motto be? It was probably something my father said to me, and I try and live by it, especially on social media, is that, Allistair, if you don't have anything positive to say, don't say it. So I have that motto, like on social media, if you're not going to put something positive out, just don't put it out. And so I think those are probably the two things. I don't know if I always succeed at them, but I mean, those are the two mottos.
I'm sure you have. And tell me an advice that you would give yourself when you were 15 years old, looking into the future.
Yeah, I know it's very cliche, but maybe just enjoy the journey more instead of waiting for the result and then thinking you're going to be happy. So example, when I was a professional athlete in duathlon, running and biking, I would, go to world championships and lock myself away until the race and never enjoy the city or never enjoy team dinners and stuff because I was so like this. And it's funny, I had
it's a huge one. It's a huge part of success too, I think.
Yeah, I think, look, in one way it got me to where I was, and the other way I missed out on a lot of experiences and so on. I was chatting to a Olympic swimmer who beat Michael Phelps back in 2004 in the Olympics, and he won gold. Oh man, his name has just gone past me here. Not Drake, it was Skuman. And he said the same thing. I asked him this question, what do you regret or what? And he says, I just wish I'd enjoyed the Olympic Village and enjoyed like the other thing. He said, I would lock myself away in the room as well and come out from my race and then go back. And so for me, it would probably be that, is like, enjoy the journey, because you're going to be spending most of the time on the journey anyway.
Yeah. And this is something I spoke to the team about always, is you never know when it's going to end. You have no idea. Like, obviously, you have 4 years in college. If you're a pro, you have no idea. And even in college, 4 years means you don't know. You don't know if you're going to get injured. You don't know if coronavirus is going to come around. You don't know. So I always push to have fun with my girls. I always push for them to enjoy it. And it was a balance, right? And I think just understanding that balance could get you to do both, I think. But like you said, it also put you to where you were, and took you where, the success that you wanted to achieve. And I think you've turned it into a nice thing about excellence. And it's okay if I didn't reach the perfect self today. I can do it tomorrow. So Again, Allistair, I'm so happy and so glad you spoke to me. Let's stay in touch. I think you're great. You're unbelievable at what you do, and you should keep doing what you do, because the purpose is, it's real, and it helps many people, and you're having the impact that you want. So let's, again, thank you, and I hope you stay safe and you start traveling soon.
Yeah, me too. No, thanks so much, Laura. I really appreciate coming on here as well and sharing, and definitely let's hope we'll all get out of this situation, this coronavirus situation, and then back to normality, whatever that is.
Whatever that is. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, okay?
Thanks again, Laura. Take care.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.